I'm 78 years old. My life has passed, but certain smells still haunt me. The smell of wet earth, the smoke of the stove, the crackling of bread baking in the tandoor. Perhaps it's those little voices in one's memory that make one human. Today I'll tell you a bread story. But that bread wasn't just about flour and water. It was about patience, love, and a little childhood. I was 12 years old then. Our village was small, the roads were muddy, and even the goats had difficulty walking in winter. Our house was made of adobe, with a crooked roof, but it was warm inside. My mother would wake up with the morning call to prayer, fire up the tandoor, and take out the flour bag. I was always following her. I would help and watch with curiosity. Kneading dough seemed magical to me. A handful of flour, a little water, a pinch of salt. Then you mix it, and suddenly the scent of life fills that small room. It was cold that morning. My mother was a little weak. My daughter, just stir a little, she said. I eagerly jumped in. But that's just being a kid, I have no patience. As I kneaded the dough, I said, let's bake it. My mother laughed and said, dough doesn't like being rushed, my child. I didn't listen. Before the dough had risen, I threw it into the tandoor. A little later, I took out the bread. It was hard as a rock. Moreover, the edges were burnt, and the inside was doughy. I looked at the burnt piece in my hand, embarrassed. My mother looked at me and smiled. She didn't get angry. She just said, nothing can rise without patience. That day, that saying was engraved in my heart, but I didn't understand it at the time. It's just bread, I said to myself. So what? Years passed. Life gave me days like those breads that didn't rise. I wanted things early, I wanted them right away, I didn't wait. And each time, the result was hard as a rock. I had sent my husband off to the army. Those years were chaotic, with no news, no letters. As the days passed, my heart sank. One morning, my mother's voice echoed in my ears. Nothing can rise without patience. I muttered to myself, but mother, one grows old with patience too. But I waited. One day there was a knock on the door and he was there. Tired, but alive. At that moment, I realized that some waiting requires not only patience but also faith. Then my first child was born. It was a difficult birth. Hours passed, and the pains didn't ease. I cried, enough, now, I said, I can't take it. I pleaded with the midwife, let it end already. At that moment, my mother's voice echoed through me again, nothing can ferment without patience. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. When I heard my son crying, the first thing I did was remember those words. Patience, my child. Patience isn't just waiting. Patience is not letting your insides rot while you wait, not turning into anger. Like dough rising in a tandoor oven, a person's insides slowly mature with patience. When I was young, I wanted everything early. A home, a child, peace, happiness. But nothing comes before its time. Look, if you pick a fruit from the branch, it's still ripe. But if it sits in the sun a little longer, its insides become honey. So is a person. One day, I was at the tandoor again. My daughter is also 12. Mom, should I stir it? She asked. I smiled. I looked at her and saw my own childhood. I handed her the dough. In less than 5 minutes, she was grumbling, "This isn't working. It's runny," I said. My daughter, both flour and water have their own habits. Sometimes if you stir too little, it won't rise. Sometimes if you stir too much, it breaks. And so is life. Don't love too little, don't love too much. Love when it thickens, wait when it thickens. One day, a young girl came to me. "Grandma," she said, "my love has left me, I can't bear it." Her eyes were filled with tears, her hands shaking. I said, "Come. Sit here." I sat her down next to the tandoor. I handed her a piece of dough. "Stir it." 5 minutes passed. "Is it done?" she said. I said, "No, knead it more." Another 10 minutes passed. And she was tired. "Enough," she said. I said, "Look, if you leave it now, it won't rise. But if you're patient a little longer, you'll make the best bread." Then we were silent. An hour passed, and the dough had risen. He looked into my eyes and said, "I see. As a human being like that?" I said, "A human being is like dough. It needs to rest inside before it breaks and hardens." Now I look back and see. Life taught me lessons like bread. Some burned, some raw, but in the end, I was always satisfied. Because I've tasted both error and patience. Patience, my child, is a kind of surrender. But not blindly. A patient person is one who says, "Let it be late, but let it be right." Patience isn't just waiting, it's maintaining one's intention while waiting. One time, while I was working in the field, it rained. The wheat was soaked before it even ripened. The villagers said, "It's ruined." I remained silent. 2 days later, the sun came out. And the wheat dried again, and became even more fertile. That day, I said, patience is sometimes believing in the unseen. Years later, my husband fell ill. He remained in bed for months. I stayed by his side at night and baked bread in the tandoor in the morning. One day he asked, "Where do you find so much patience?" I said, "I learned from the dough." He laughed. At that moment, his eyes welled up with tears. "My life, too, was leavened by your patience," he said. That statement was etched into the deepest place in my heart. Now, every morning, I sit by the tandoor. I sift the flour, add the water, knead. But with every touch, a memory comes to life. My mother's hand, my daughter's voice, my granddaughter's laughter. They're all in that dough. There's a story in every loaf, a prayer in every rise. You know, bread baked with patience smells better. Because it's not rushed, but care. Just like love. Just like a mother's prayer. Just like an old woman speaking slowly as she recounts her life. If you ask me now, "Grandma, what's the summary of all these years?" I'd say this, "My child, life is dough. No matter how much you need it, if you don't wait patiently, it won't rise. And every act of patience will one day become a warm loaf of bread on the table. Its fragrance permeates the home, bringing peace to the heart." That's when you realize that patience isn't just about waiting. Patience is about being willing to be baked. Even now, sometimes when my grandchildren are in a hurry and want something, I still see that hard, rock-hard bread. I silently say to myself, nothing can ferment without patience, my child.